Welcome to podcast 43. Yes, maybe, but yes.
Hello, welcome back to podcast 43. I am your host, Chris Borg, and I am joined by my other host, Fulton, and a special guest, Reagan Jones.
Thank you for having me on yet again, boys, for some more Peter discourse.
Yeah,
my favorite variety of discourse of all.
Well, he's Peter's here in spirit, I think. Maybe.
That makes it sound like he's no longer with us, Fulton.
I'd like to watch like a live feed of Peter listening to a full episode of podcast 43. I can only imagine his reactions to hearing such
such
commentary.
I'd love to know that he had heard it. But maybe one day we'll slip him a flash drive. I'll find him and slip him a flash drive wrapped in a bandana, and maybe he might unravel it or so.
But yeah, so I guess this time around we picked three other Bogdanovich films to talk about. His first film, 1968's Targets, produced by Roger Corman. And then we also They All Laughed was the second one that we picked, which is a pretty personal film and Bogdanovich's favorite of the films that he made, and his comeback with Mask, director's cut. Important. Nice. That distinction is very important.
It's a massive asterisk.
Yeah. The Bruce cut.
The Bruce cut. When you think about it, Release the Bruce cut was like the precursor to Release the Snyder cut.
That's honestly pretty impressive. They arranged for the rights for that like so late for a film that I don't think that many people really care about. Like to go to the trouble of getting all those Bruce songs.
And nearly 20 years later.
Yeah.
I'm interested to talk to you guys about that, or whether or not. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. So I guess we should start with Targets first.
Yeah. Right? Targets is Bogdanovich's first movie, and like a lot of Corman films, it's a bit rough around the edges, I'll say, in my opinion. But it's kind of like this whole movie about like violence and violence in America, and like Boris Karloff is like this movie star that is kind of disillusioned with just like the amount of violence, and how he's like, I'm a horror character, but like, I play all these characters in horror movies, but like nothing is more scary than all these shootings that are going on. And then there's a completely separate story that kind of converges at the end with this guy that just murders his whole family. But what did you guys think of Targets?
I think it's mainly interesting. I mean, it's a fascinating piece in terms of the construction, because Peter was contractually obligated to include scenes from some old Boris Karloff films that Corman had the rights to. And so there's some extended bits in this film where either at the studio or at a drive-in, a bunch of people are watching this old, film of Boris Karloff in a castle. And so to take that footage and then splice it into this film is pretty ostentatious and pretty, and given, the Corman factory B-movie stylings, it's a pretty radical concept for a film to sort of have these two plots going at the same time. So that's neat. I also really enjoy that, like, it's hyper relevant to its time. It's definitely playing on like guys like Charles Whitman, who, shot up the University of Texas campus a few years before this, and some other various shootings around this time. Peter is so obsessed with nostalgia and recreating genre modes of the past in his other films that I find it very interesting that his debut, despite being, literally about, an aging relic of Hollywood coming to terms with his own sort of, irrelevance, is very much about modern times. There's rock music on the radio. It feels very, very much present day, almost radically so in a way that I don't think a big studio picture of the time would have been able to muster. It has that sort of independent nerve and edginess to it, which he would never really dabble in again, very much choosing. I mean, one of the most baffling opening 1-2 punches to a career imaginable would be this in The Last Picture Show. I can't think of two very many more different films in almost every possible way.
I feel like, I mean, it's also important to note that Samuel Fuller also is uncredited, but he also wrote the screenplay, and this does kind of feel like it fits more into like Sam Fuller's oeuvre of kind of like these low budget type shock pictures
that are kind of social message pictures, but also still fairly like erring on the side of exploitation filmmaking to some
entirely
extent. Yeah, it's an interesting picture for sure. I don't think it totally holds together, but I think there's a lot of neat themes and bits to be excavated. And I mean, many people have made this observation before me, but I think it's pretty clear that Tarantino got an awful lot out of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, both in terms of just the cruising around LA and the aging star facing his obsolescence, and the shocking overlap between these two concurrent stories of real life mundane violence with Hollywood star, and then the ending even kind of over, they finally come face to face after the whole I mean, there's a lot of Once Upon a Time in this film, which is a really interesting, of all movies to sort of forbear that one. It's an interesting pick, but
I really hadn't thought about that. But
he just drives around listening to the radio a lot. I mean, it's and that's sort of just an unease slowly creeping up throughout the film, and then finally these two seemingly vastly different forces have to come head to head.
Yeah, and
oh yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know. It's just pretty insane that apparently they finished production, and then there were a bunch of just like assassinations that happened after they finished production. Like Martin Luther King was assassinated and RFK was assassinated, and they still were like, yeah, let's release this at the date that we decided to release it at. Like RFK was assassinated like months before this movie came out. Like I'm talking like 2 months. And then Martin Luther King was like 4 months before this movie. But it's, I don't know.
And now we can't even release The Hunt,
Now we can't even release The Hunt.
How we've fallen.
Just to throw my thoughts on there really quick. I don't think I'm as taken away with the film as maybe like other people might be, but I do still find it really interesting. I think I find the backstory of how the whole thing came together really interesting, about like Reagan, how you were saying he was contractually obligated to make it, and Boris was also under contract with Roger Corman to do it. And like that whole highway scene, they didn't actually get any permits to make it. They literally just shot it. So they actually had a girl, well, they had other people like on the highway that would slow their kind of cars down so they could get the shot. And apparently they had like radio set up and everything. So I just find that all really interesting. The lead, although I'm forgetting his name, I was telling Chris the whole time, I probably annoyed Chris a little bit, but I kept saying like, God damn, he looks just like Matt Damon to me. Like, it's just like the way is kind of, I don't know. It was really tripping me up.
But I like that guy's almost complete lack of charisma. Like he's just such a anonymous being, and it makes. I mean, that's the point,
Yeah,
but
he does clearly feel like he's about to do something very dangerous. Like that whole scene where he's smoking a cigarette in the bed.
He's like, "Don't turn the lights on."
It's like, well, I mean, but there's, and this isn't something that I'm pretty sure I heard this in the Important Cinema Club, but I do like the juxtaposition of kind of a real life terror and kind of a fictional horror film terror kind of meeting and coming together. I find that juxtaposition really interesting. But I think if we're talking about it in terms of Peter's kind of filmography, I kind of lean more into The Last Picture Show as I do into this one. Although I do find it interesting, I just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I haven't seen anything quite like The Last Picture Show since I've seen it. I do get very kind of taken away with that film, but
But yeah, I think I don't know. I think the one that we can probably move on to, if you guys are, you guys have exhausted all your targets, talking points, is the big one. They all laughed, which I think has the most interesting production of the three that we're talking about, but also very tragic production, of course, because this film was released in 1981, and 1 year before that, after shooting was done, Dorothy Stratton, who starred in the film, was murdered by her husband. And she also had a romantic. She was also romantically involved with Bogdanovich, and I think he also, and then he also says in interviews that he, blamed himself for what happened to her. And so I think that there's a lot of context that needs to be placed in front of before you watch this movie, I think, and also like just kind of her story as well. And I think that maybe we should probably start with Star 80 for that, I guess, because I know that Fulton just watched it today, actually, but both me and Reagan had seen it. And I know that Reagan has probably a completely different opinion of it, judging by his rating of it on Letterboxd.
I guess we should say for the folks at home that Star 80 is Bob Fosse's follow-up to All That Jazz. So this was definitely a hotly anticipated major film at the time that attempts to tell a lightly fictionalized but seemingly fairly accurate retelling of Dorothy Stratton's life. Most of the key characters are, have the names of the actual players in real life, save notably the director character who Dorothy begins having an affair with, who really bears no resemblance in name or personality or dress to Peter Bogdanovich. It's like a completely just anonymous Hollywood director character. And it ended up being Fosse's last film, if I'm not mistaken. He died fairly shortly of a heart attack, as he predicted in All That Jazz, just a few years after finishing Star 80.
And so this movie came out only 3 years after Stratton was murdered. She started out as a she started out as a Playboy model, and after meeting her future husband, Paul Snyder, he sent in nude photographs of her to Playboy, and ended up getting her ended up getting her signed as a centerfold model. And then she ended up becoming a Playboy playmate and started to go into acting. And this was kind of going to be her big break. And she met Bogdanovich and had a romantic relationship with him until she was horribly murdered.
And fascinatingly, the way that crossover occurred is that Playboy partially funded Saint Jack.
That's right.
Before They All Laugh. So while screening that there for Hugh, he was introduced to Dorothy, and fate took its place.
And Saint Jack is also responsible for ending his relationship with Sybil Shepherd too.
Yeah.
right
Unfortunately,
just a very, very tumultuous decade for Peter Bogdanovich's love life. The 70s were. But we should get back to Star 80.
Yeah.
Y'all watched it much more recently than I, so I'll just go ahead and get my thoughts out briefly and then let you two actually, go in depth. I don't dislike the film. I think Eric Roberts' sleazy performance as good. Stratton's husband and manager is pretty damn great. One of the first starring Eric Roberts performances I think I've ever seen. I feel like he's in everything, but so few canonical films he has a big meaty part in.
Me and Fulton are a big fan of his later work. It's called Stalked by My Doctor. It's like a franchise where he's just this creepy doctor.
Yeah, I know he acts so much a
Those are
Lifetime
quite fun.
movies and that sort of thing. Yeah, but no, it was a very controversial film at the time because the climactic ending in which the murder of Dorothy is very graphically, very just perfunctorily, step by step depicted, was actually shot in the same room with the same furniture that was there when it actually happened, which is just remarkably sordid and remarkably poor taste from Fosse, but it's the sort of thing that I feel like if it was like an amazing, transcendent film, would be just like harrowing, deeply affecting trivia. But to me, it's just kind of a mess, and the script is all over the place. Mariel Hemingway's performance as Dorothy is kind of just okay, in my opinion, and it
Really?
just all hold. It feels like a TV movie to me. The style isn't there. Aren't there? Does it try to do the interview shtick? Like, does it cut to interviews with people?
Partially, yeah.
Like fake interviews, yeah. It just but it doesn't commit to that.
No,
it
no,
like pops
no,
in
it
and
doesn't.
out. It's just there's times where it feels like it's going to be really flashy and ostentatious with the direction, and then there's other times where it just feels so basic and bland. And I just found for such an inherently, disturbingly, obviously fascinating, watchable story, it just kind of fumbles the bag a little bit for me. But I think you two liked it more than I did.
Yeah.
Well, I will say it did feel more like a Paul Snyder movie than a Dorothy Stratton movie, which
yeah.
I mean, it can. I think I might sit in between. I liked it, but I think it didn't really. It's very sad and depressing, but I think that's just because of the real life story that it is portraying. It was always going to be sad and depressing, but I don't think it really hit me as hard as I thought it was going to. Because I've talked to Chris about this movie in the past, but there's a movie called In Cold Blood, which is essentially is the same idea, right? And it's all shot on location in the exact same room in the exact same basement that these people were murdered in. Although it was much later, like almost like close to a decade later after the events had happened. But I think that film really kind of there is an ethical debate over whether or not you should do that, and I think that is kind of important. But I think that film kind of settles its mood and tone a lot better than this one. And it feels, I mean, that film legit really scared me because I think it hits its tone exactly the way it needs to. Whereas this film, I don't know if it really landed the mark for me per se, but I still did enjoy it. But I've never seen any of his other films, so I didn't really have a certain type of style in mind in terms of what he has done as a director in the past.
Well, I think that I disagree with what Reagan said about Mariel Hemingway's performance as Dorothy Stratton not being good. I think that, especially going by interviews with Peter Bogdanovich about how he remembered her, I think that she did a good job of portraying somebody that's like a very warm, like kind of compassionate person that is just kind of taken out of her home in Canada and just like kind of brought into the limelight, and just kind of how she's trying to deal with it, but also still kind of in touch with reality, especially a lot more than and then especially juxtaposing that with Paul Snyder, who is always a sleazeball, like from the get-go, like literally just trying to like pimp this poor high schooler out and just try to make money off of her and use her as a catalyst so he can get famous. And I don't know, I think that's kind of I just like that as a story idea. It's just one of those movies that I just have been thinking about as soon as I've seen it, and I don't think it really would be good without Roberts' performance, but I also don't think it would be as good without Hemingway's performance too, and I think that they work well.
With her, I thought she had a very good like innocence to her that I can just hear in Peter's voice when he talks about her. I just wish I got to see more of her. And with Roberts, I think I agree with you guys. He does a fantastic job, and I love I think he's got good teeth for the character. They kind of look like coffee and cigarette stained, and I was like, they did a very good job with that. Yeah, no, I agree. I just wish I got to see more of her. I think that's kind of ultimately where I lie.
And yeah, that's probably a better complaint than mine, because I feel like Hemingway probably does about everything she can with the film as it's written. I think my issue is more with the characterization of her, which, to be fair, obviously I'm sure the entire production team was primarily men. And I would not doubt that the screenwriting team behind it felt that they could peer into the psyche of of the Schneider character a little more easily, and there's a little more, and instead of writing more maybe with Dorothy and her sister and her mother, and it does feel more about, as Peter named his book, the killing of the unicorn than the interior life of the unicorn herself, which ends up just, I don't know. It's a sickening final 15 minutes. It's as tough a
It's
watch
very
as
sad.
It's so
any
sad.
film to not be like that gory. I mean, it's gory, but like compared to other films, it's not super gory, but just the agonizing length to which that final scene is drug out to. It's
I mean, I
very
knew
tough
how it
watch.
was going to end, but at the same time, you think, oh, maybe she'll get away. Like, there's that.
Well,
There's
she
that.
gets so close.
I know,
Goes on
she's
for
I was
so
like,
long.
please.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I know it's not gonna. Yeah, no, man, that was painful. There's a scene where he drops the keys to the door so she can leave, and she like puts the key in, but decides to. I mean, it's in her nature to take care of other people around her. And so knowing probably what he's about to do, she goes to stop him from shooting himself. I think a kind of a good juxtaposition in the beginning is if you kind of, because I forget who said it or where I heard it, but the reason she was working at a Dairy Queen was to provide for her family. I think that would have been kind of an interesting addition to the movie, to see her kind of providing for her family, to kind of see more of that kind of loving nature that she had, to juxtapose against that final scene where she tries to care for somebody again.
Yeah.
It's close to me. It's close, but
But so then when They All Laughed was released a year after Stratton's murder, the beginning of the film, there is a credit, dedicating the movie to Dorothy Stratton, the Bogdanovich. So that's kind of who Bogdanovich dedicated the movie to. I mean, obviously her murder just broke him for like years, and that was why he said he wrote that book and just couldn't really make movies. But I think that another reason why he was in such a bad mental state was probably the financial performance from They All Laughed, which failed at the box office because Bogdanovich refused to kind of kowtow to the studio's needs and ended up buying the movie back and distributing it himself. And it was kind of a failure. But I think that it's also kind of, they talk about on the TCM, the Plot Thickens podcast, how a lot of newer directors really appreciate this movie. And I also can see why. I think it's a really great film. I think it's probably up there with one of his best, maybe like a top 3 possibly for me.
I would agree. It's a difficult film. I can't imagine this ever really being a hit in any way. Just because it's so uncommercial in how it's structured for what is ostensibly a fairly commercial plot. Like the conception of it as this sort of, rom-com caper would appear to be, kind of a light, airy, easily digestible thing. But it takes roughly an hour of the fairly lengthy, 110, 115 minute runtime to even understand what the fuck is going on, for what is really a fairly basic, simple, sweet plot. There's just an awful lot of glances and nods and scurrying around for a good 30 to 40 minutes before you can really put any. You just have to. I mean, I was in from ground zero because of the overabundance of country music in the film.
Oh yeah.
I'm a big sucker for 70s, 80s country. And just like every other one of his films, Peter plays the DJ on the New York City country radio station that just every car in the entire town happens to be listening to at every given time. So, I mean, you got Rodney Crowell, you got Johnny Cash. There's a lengthy sequence between Ben Gazzara and Audrey Hepburn that's entirely soundtracks to songs from one of my favorite albums, Waylon Jennings' Honky Tonk Heroes. So it's some fairly deep country cuts and some great vibes. I thought Colleen Camp's country songs at her little country themed nightclub are all pretty delightful.
Peter wrote them too.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. So yeah, it's a odd, kind of awkward film. Like I saw, like, when the rehabilitation was first happening 20 years ago, I think like Tarantino put this in his top 10 of all time at one point.
Yeah.
And like, Wes Anderson sort of like oversaw the special features on the DVD. You can actually watch an interview between Wes and Peter on YouTube taken from the DVD special features, which is really, really good. But it's just one of those films that has a strange sort of alchemy going on, and I can't fully divorce myself from the real world, trauma surrounding it in terms of my emotional response to the film. But I don't really want to, because I find, he did edit it with Dorothy's demise in mind. It was constructed after that had all happened, and it just feels like she's a minor character in the film. But the way that the camera lingers on her and the way these scenes are cut, particularly the final scene between her and John Ritter in the nightclub towards the end of the film, I find just overwhelming as it just lingers on. Is like, it just feels like, Peter taking his very last looks at this woman, that he loves so much. It's it's overwhelming. I mean, again, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I'm just sort of spitballing, free associating thoughts I have about this film. We should probably get into Ben Gazzara and Audrey Hepburn and her final on-screen performance.
Wait, this was Audrey Hepburn's last movie?
I think she had cameos in some like cartoons and some other stuff. This was her last like major role in a film.
Yeah, because I know she took a break and then she pretty much came out of retirement to make this movie too, which is pretty
her
cool.
And Gazzara had an affair like 5 years prior on some other film, which he wrote, this in mind. That's such an unexpected addition to this roster too. Like every other character and every other actor makes so much sense to me in terms of like this stage of his career. But Audrey Hepburn's inclusion here is very special to me.
I think that this movie, I think that this movie also proves how cool Ben Gazzara is. Like,
it's maybe my favorite of his performances. Like, I think like Chinese Bookie and Saint Jack are obviously, he's probably more known for those, but he's basically the lead here. Him and Ritter are probably, the two most
the two Peters.
Included. Yeah, the two Peters, the two various, younger Peter and what Peter wishes he was as an old man. I think I wrote a Letterboxd review once. I was like, every man in this film is Peter Bogdanovich in some way. Like, it really, this is how he wishes the world worked. You're just always trying to run away from all the women you've already slept with, and every new woman you meet wants to sleep with you, and they're all blonde and they're all gorgeous. This is Peter's dream world.
It really is. I think that. Yeah, like, so I mean, this is a pretty, like you said, it's a pretty simple story that's kind of and Bogdanovich makes it convoluted and it's a little bit hard to understand, but it's basically just about these guys that work for a private detective agency that try to find out if women are cheating on their spouses, but then they fall in love with the women that they have to follow who are cheating on their spouses.
Again, it's a very like screwball premise. It does not feel like the premise of a film that could be made in like 1981.
No, not
and it's
at all.
Not at all like shot or paced like a screwball film. It is shot and paced with this sort of like glacial New Hollywood, a lot of kind of lingering wides, a lot of like you said, diegetic music. It's a fascinatingly constructed little film.
Like, I was almost expecting like What's Up Doc type level of like
antics.
Yeah, and but that kind of quickly dissipated. But man, I wish Peter would have made an autobiographical kind of film where he had John Ritter, because John Ritter, I think he plays young Peter so well to me. But yeah, no, I wanted to say that because I did watch the One Day Since Yesterday doc, and I'll get on to that after we kind of wrap up our thoughts. One of my favorite bits is Peter's talking about, the opening sequence with the helicopter and Ben Gazzara kind of Ben Gazzara kind of coming up in the cab. And originally that had no dialogue whatsoever. And he's like, well, originally you couldn't hear, oh no, that's not what he said. He was like, originally you couldn't tell what was going on. So we added some dialogue to make it a little bit more understandable. And I was like, I don't think that added dialogue did too much, Peter, but I still appreciate the effort. But yeah, no, another thing that really confuses me, and I'd love to ask Peter one day if it ever happens, I don't know, but because I'm under the understanding that he does own the rights to the film, right? Because he bought it back from the studio.
I'm not entirely sure. I think he may have sold it elsewhere during his bankruptcy of the 80s.
Oh yeah,
because he did file for bankruptcy not once but twice,
and
too.
he sold off a lot of his assets. But I need to check who put the DVD out,
because I was gonna
put
say
the DVD out. So
interesting. Okay,
yeah.
See, that's the thing that confuses me the most, is because I know that at least with the Last Picture Show in Texasville, the rights are kind of all over the place, but I can't fathom why this one is kind of, I mean, it's on YouTube at at a really low pixelation, but why it doesn't actually have like a Blu-ray release, or why Criterion hasn't done anything with it, because it seems to be very influential to a lot of like the directors that we look up to now. I just find it really interesting that it seems a lot of people know about it, but a lot of people don't at the same time. But I mean, that's not, I got a little sidetracked, but yeah, I thought this film was a lot of fun. It's a lot of people sleeping with each other and cheating on each other, and following their impulses and desires.
And everyone's reaction to these things is very, oh shucks, no one gets too upset about anybody. It's all
not at all.
Well, the heart wants what it wants.
Christy
Again,
Miller,
in Peter's mind, no one cares,
Exactly. That's how he would like it to be.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cheat on her,
Yeah,
It
it happens.
Colleen Camp was just kind of like, I'm gonna give you your stuff back, Ben Gazzara. Now I'm gonna try to get with John Ritter, and then that's pretty much it. But she's still like, oh, here, go to my show.
Colleen Camp's performance has grown on me with multiple viewings. The first time it was almost a little too broad, but I think in seeing the film again, it starts tiptoeing in that screwball direction at times. The whole bit in the shoe store with the dog, and with Stratton and Camp kind of overlapping, and all that. Like, Camp's performance is super, Hawksian, leading lady with her hands on her hips, kind of telling the men what for, and kind of just chirping very authoritatively, just constant, again, it's that screwball,
it feels like
minute dialogue,
almost kind of like a Katharine Hepburn.
Yes,
archetypal.
very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. He tried to do that again, or I guess he tried to do that before with Sybil and Daisy Miller to varying degrees of success. I like that film more than most people, but anyhow, the Camp performance, seeing it in that lineage, it's grown on me a good bit, and I find her very charming in the film. I think she's great on stage too. I think all the performance scenes are really endearing.
For sure. Did you want to say anything else about the One Day Since Yesterday, that documentary, Fulton?
Yeah, I mean, it interviews Quentin Tarantino, Noah Baumbach, Wes Anderson, and it was all made during the time that he was making It's Just Funny That Way. Was that was it 2014?
She's
kind of funny. She's funny, that the Owen Wilson one.
Yeah, so it was made.
Colleen Camp is in, and a lot of other folks.
Yeah, the documentary was made during that, and so it's kind of I don't know. I don't know if because you kind of have to, I think if you want to look at it, you kind of have to compare, how available the film is now to how it was when it was, or how available it was back when it was made. So like I said, now it's on YouTube. It's not as hard to find now. Physical copies, I'm sure, are probably harder to find, but it's on YouTube, so it's easily available. to anybody that would just has an interest into it. But the film does kind of, or the documentary does paint a picture about the film as being the great lost American film. And so it was hard to get back then. I don't know if the special edition DVD was out necessarily. I don't know the release date of that, but it does kind of paint this photo that it's this lost great American film. And so I just felt like I'd kind of known everything by the time I felt like it didn't really add anything new to kind of what I'd already known about Peter Bogdanovich, and it doesn't really go that in depth on They All Laughed in the way that you would think. It does interview, or they do interview Peter Bogdanovich, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just we live in a time where we have The Plot Thickens, where he was on that and he did a really in-depth interview, and so I would say kind of go towards that if you want to learn more about him and just this point in time in a better way that I think is more emotional and does kind of a better job. And I don't mean to be too harsh on the film. I don't know if it does anything necessarily new, but at the time I can see how it could have been insightful. But I don't know necessarily now how it kind of holds up. But yeah, I mean, it's weird because at first it seems like it's trying to kind of chart the successes of Peter's life, and then it kind of focuses on a different area, and then kind of switches back to the beginning, and then to his relationship with Sybil, and then switches back over. It's a little kind of odd.
That's exactly how I felt about a Natalie Wood documentary that I watched on HBO that came out like last year. It was similarly like just kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's got I like the poster for the movie though.
That's what really matters.
It's interesting to think of sort of the shifting cultural tides of the last 5 years, thanks to like specifically film Twitter and Letterboxd among film obsessives in terms of, I mean, I think probably the most glaring example is Elaine May's rehabilitation. I think that's probably, the remaster of Mikey and Nikki kind of kickstarted this whole, now she's considered, most people probably think of her as better than Mike Nichols at this point, as far as like a directorial career. I feel like, or at least on the same level, the average, cineast, which 20 years ago, I'm not sure how many people had even seen, Mikey and Nikki or The Heartbreak Kid.
I'm just saying that, she hit all homers. All 4 of those movies are great. So
right. So that's an aside, but this is a similar case where I think a good chunk more people have seen They All Laugh now than probably 10 years ago.
I don't know. I would
to the internet.
I would say similarly. It seems like Shyamalan is going through that too.
He is experiencing that rehabilitation right now. Yeah, it's funny. I saw Peter in person at a screening of What's Up Doc in LA last week, and he was sort of chuckling. He just kind of was going off on tangents about his whole career, but he was chuckling about how At Long Last Love, which he called At Long Last Turkey, has been sort of like he's like, people like it now all of a sudden. The way he described it seemed to be he still didn't think it was any good, but like apparently he said someone else cut it, like the new cut of it he apparently did not oversee. He's like, someone else cut it, now everyone likes it apparently, so good on them, I guess. So that even he cannot get behind the rehabilitation of that one. But I do see like on Letterboxd, there's a lot of the high ranked reviews of that one are like super glowing, and there's a lot of very glowing write-ups when that I think that was a Blu-ray release pretty recently came out. There's and then people saying, oh, this is the better La La Land, which at the time it was considered one of the worst films ever made. Yeah. So I still need to see that one. That one in Nickelodeon is a little Burt Reynolds era. I really want to see those.
Yeah, I do really want to.
I think more and more people will see They All Laughed, and the obvious thing to say is, hey, Criterion, but
yeah, that was my kind of. I remember when we did the first episode, I sent them an email saying, hey, you guys need to get on top of that Texasville director's cut. You've got half the battle done with getting Last Picture Show, but I'm just surprised that no one has released a collection of his films. I just feel like it's right there, but maybe the market isn't ready for a Peter collection yet. But
Well,
But yeah.
at long last, Love is apparently got a release on Blu-ray like about 8 years ago, and the only copy that I can find on Amazon is only $199 brand new. So
Oh, what a
Yeah.
steal!
what a
Yeah.
steal!
Oh, I do want to throw this out there. There's me and Chris looked it up the other day, but Saint Jack has a Blu-ray release, but it was limited to like 1,500 copies. You can get it for like $30 now, but I don't know. I just find it weird that all of his stuff is kind of difficult to find. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah,
I
Nickelodeon. There's a Blu-ray release that's non-region, and then there's a DVD two for. Yeah, Nickelodeon's only been released on disc in like France.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know those French, they have very interesting tastes when it comes to American filmmakers.
They're big on their auteurs. This is true.
Yeah, cool. Because apparently Saint Jack was like really big in Europe. They really liked Saint Jack for some reason.
Vingazar is a pimp.
Yeah.
How can you say no to that?
But I guess after this, after they all laughed, Peter Bogdanovich didn't want to direct anything, turned down a bunch because it didn't do well. And he also filed for bankruptcy. And Dorothy Stratton's death, of course, was a very, very big part of his, like, very big moment in his life and very, tragic. But then he finally took up directing Mask, which is a very strange choice. But when you hear him talk about why he picked Mask, he kind of did it. He said he did it for Dorothy Stratton. He said that like Dorothy Stratton always talked about how she felt like she was like the Elephant Man, and but he thought like, oh, everybody's scared of the Elephant Man because he's he's different from everyone else. And similarly, people thought of Dorothy Stratton in the same way, where it's like they didn't treat her like a normal person because she was so beautiful.
I think he said something like extreme beauty equates to extreme ugliness as well.
Yeah.
And the way that people react to it.
But I really like, I enjoyed this movie. It's very hokey. But I think I still can't help to think like this is so, it's still uplifting. Like
it's hokey on a conceptual level and in just the general type of sort of 80s family movie that it is. But I do think the direction is quite sturdy. Like I really find the framing well above average for this sort of the settings it takes place in. It's very, the suburban home and the high school and so on and so
forth. The drug addicted mother played by Cher. Yeah.
Right. Cher does a fine job here. I think Cher and Eric Stoltz and supporting man Tom Selleck here all really Tom Selleck.
Sam Elliott.
I got my mustaches confused.
How could you?
Supporting man Sam Elliott here.
That smirk he gives him.
Yeah, me and Fulton were laughing every time that he did the smirk.
He kills it.
He's a mustache rides t-shirt. It goes up there with freelance gynecologist t-shirt. I think it's perfect. It's amazing.
Freelance gynecologist.
It's one of the few great things about Once Bitten to me, but that's a side tangent.
Yeah, did you guys enjoy this film?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I especially appreciated. I liked that Harry Carey Jr. was in this movie. Like I thought that was really great because I know that, especially knowing that Bogdanovich really, looks up to John Ford and made that documentary on John Ford. And by having a Ford regular in his film, I thought was pretty great. And I also really liked his character as like this old biker named Red. But yeah, I think that I was very surprised to know that like there was a biker gang that was just like,
I did not expect
really that protected Rocky Dennis. But for people that don't know, the movie is about a real boy named Rocky Dennis who was born with a disease called craniodisphyseal dysplasia. It's a bone disorder that's very, very rare, and it causes your calcium to in your head. It causes like your head to like, I think like more like you just have much more bones in your head
I think
all
the
over.
skull keeps growing.
Yeah,
I
your
believe
skull
is
just
what the
keeps
idea was.
growing.
Yeah.
And so it's just about his life and how, you know, he has to go to school and try to like fit in with everyone. And like you said, it's a, you know, that's a very kind of corny premise, but it's quite nice. Quite a nice film, especially to watch with the family.
And
With
there's a
the
good bit of
boys.
detail in the characterizations. I enjoy, you know, just sort of the setting of this sort of counterculture, you know, biker family being who this boy belongs to. It's just not what you would expect at first blush if told that there's a film about, you know, this sort of inspiring, disability film. But
Yeah.
I think it definitely resembles the work of Hawks and Ford, and how it sort of constructs the camaraderie of the biker gang, and how there's a lot of time, you know, it's kind of a hangout movie in bits. We get a nice musical number from Cher, which is very reminiscent of moments in films like Only Angels Have Wings, where the whole gang is hanging out together, and then suddenly one person kind of starts playing a song, and then it's like, oh, here's 4 minutes of the movie, we're just going to perform the whole song, and you know, it's a bonding moment for everybody. Very charming scene.
Yeah. I like that scene a lot too, and it's sad to hear that Cher and Peter Bogdanovich did not get along when they were filming this movie together.
I did not know that, but that also does
not
not surprise me one bit. Young Laura Dern, we get a little bit of like 10-year-old Laura Dern here, who does some very moving work as Rocky's sort of camp girlfriend. It's a little too perfect because she's blind, so it's sort of a gift of the Magi type situation. But
yeah, I didn't know how I felt about that, because it's like, oh, you'll only be loved if somebody doesn't know who you look like,
right, it's
or
a
what
little
you look
too screenplay
I
convenient.
I felt the same way, but then I also thought it was kind of sweet because she's just accepting him at the base level of who he is, not, you know, you just strip people away of their appearance and who are they. That's I kind of like that if you want to look at it like that. But I did feel weird about that at first. I was like, of course he's
Right.
going to a blind camp, and I thought there was going to be kind of an interesting kind of tension there between him and the principal, but
literally all I could think of was the trauma film, The Toxic Avenger, because that's exactly the same thing as that movie where his girlfriend is blind.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Well, Reagan, I wanted to ask you something that me and Chris kind of noticed while we were watching it. So they go to a summer camp, right?
Right.
But they celebrate New Year's Eve.
It's a very good point. I didn't question it.
Yeah,
it's a pretty enjoyable scene. I like the sort of scope of the New Year's Eve celebration, but that's
I do
that's
too.
a fair point.
Yeah, I didn't.
We were like, were they doing like a early New Year's? Because like I was trying to like think of like a logical explanation for why they would be celebrating.
I feel like I vaguely recall there being some sort of excuse of like, it's a New Year's party for no reason, you know.
I like the sentiment of the party, the kind of one last, you know, hoorah. But then I was like, wait, I didn't know how to feel about that, but me and Chris may have just missed a line drop somewhere.
But the elephant in the room is the fact that Bruce Springsteen is on the soundtrack instead of Bob Seger,
right?
Which was surprising, which was very controversial. Apparently, Peter Bogdanovich had never heard of Bob Seger. It's like, who the hell is Bob Seger, and why are you putting him in my movie? Because he really wanted Bruce Springsteen to be in this film, because Rocky Dennis apparently really liked Bruce Springsteen, and then there's the Bruce Springsteen poster in his room in Eric's in the film. So I
think like he went on vacation, had Bruce Springsteen in it, and while he was on vacation, was it Universal? I don't know. The studio,
Universal.
Yeah, Universal took all the Bob. They put Bob Seger in instead of Bruce Springsteen. Now, if you told me that they took all the Steely Dan and put Bob Seger in there, I would get it. But
I would riot if
I
that
don't.
was the case.
Apparently,
know.
Bogdanovich successfully sued Universal for $19 million
Yeah.
for swapping the music without allowing him any say, like in his contract. That was technically against the rules. So he got 20 mil. Still had to file for bankruptcy again at one point, but he made 20 mil off of them deciding to swap it out because they thought Seeger would be more commercially profitable.
And apparently Cher took Team Seeger.
Oh, interesting.
She sided with.
Oh my! That was only to spite Peter. And we all know it.
Cher should have been like, just put my music in. That's the.
That would have been very funny. I don't know if Bruce's music is that relevant.
You don't think that opening Badlands
man,
drop
that
so good
thrums in my core. I think all of
I
the
don't
Promised
know.
Land later on. I mean, there's some great.
I will admit,
Bruce
Promised
moments.
Land does. I just remember hearing more Steely Dan than I did Bruce, but
There's
I
a
am
good bit of
way
Steely Dan.
more.
I mean, that's it's an embarrassment of riches. This is you're saying this like it's a bad thing.
Yeah,
No. I just mean that I'm way more familiar with Steely Dan than I am Bruce Springsteen, so that's on me. So I only recall hearing. I just remember it being like 90% Steely Dan, which is not an issue.
The question is, are we talking like, late period, like old time rock and roll Bob Seger, or would it have been like, Night Moves or something? If it was Night Moves, then like that would be good too. I think maybe we have to, we can come back. We can watch the Seger cut of Mask.
Oh,
we can
the
watch
director's
Director's
cut of
Cut of
Texasville.
Yes.
And then throw in at long
last love and Nickelodeon, I think would both be great. There's like new 2000s cuts of both of those as well. So,
and Reagan, you haven't seen the Cat's Meow yet, so
nothing post
really
Mask.
do.
I haven't seen A Saintly Switch, his Disney Channel original film.
I really want to see that,
starring the New Orleans Saints player.
I'm telling you, we got to do the TV era Peter Bogdanovich for an episode.
And Sir with Love 2.
Yeah.
Speaking of Natalie
Deadly
Wood,
Night.
he directed a Natalie Wood documentary.
Yeah,
that's right.
There's like a crime movie that he did.
There's the 5-hour Tom Petty retrospective, Running Down a Dream. I think it's 4.5 hours. I mean, there's the back half of the man's career is home with some fascinating material.
Never mind, not a documentary, a dramatization about Natalie Wood that's 3 hours long.
Thank God.
It's called Naked City, A Killer Christmas. That's the one I was thinking of. Sorry. We'll save that for Christmas.
I like how they talk about on the Plot Thickens, on the TCM Plot Thickens podcast, they talk about like Bogdanovich decided to go into directing TV in the 90s, which was very rare for like Hollywood directors to do at the time. And he just said that he liked it. The only difference is that they're a lot more, they care about deadlines a lot more and you have to just shoot faster. But other than that, like he said, it was completely the same.
There's no difference. Yeah.
It's like, what?
I wish they would have dived a little bit more into that, because I am interested to hear about that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, the thing called love is that's the big one that I want to see. But
I've also heard that like Noises Off is legitimately really good, which is like an adaptation of a play starring Michael Caine and Carol Burnett, as well as John Ritter. So that one is like a Broadway comedy.
Julie Haggerty.
Yeah, it's pretty stacked cast. Christopher Reeve, Superman. So that seems like a pretty good one.
Yeah. So this is really a gift that keeps on giving as far as what Peter Bogdanovich has to offer, and I think I can safely speak for all of us that we will probably be back here again with.
I hope so. We got to do Long Last Love. I really think that's that one's going to be a fascinating thing to discuss.
Well, on that note, are we good with all of our Peter content that we have to speak on?
I think I've said all I have to say. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on again, Reagan, and I think it is time for us to cut to an ad break.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
all
thank you, Reagan.
Until next time, Mr. Jones. All right. So we are back from our break. And we are going to be talking about our some new releases as well as each of our top 3 favorite films that we've watched this week. So I guess without further ado, I'll just briefly talk about Space Jam: A New Legacy, which I watched. And I can honestly tell you that the more I think about it since I watched it last week, the more I may actually say that this could be the worst film released.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I thought I was following you there for a minute.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sometimes our parallel thinking isn't in line, but that's all right. We just got to recalibrate things. But no, I actually think this could be one of the worst films released by a major studio of the 21st century. I think that it is a very sinister film, and it feels like randomly generated content in a lot of ways, where it's just like hopping to various Warner Brothers properties and with horrid animation. Like actually just some really ugly computer animation. The 2D animation is bad, but then when they go into the third dimension to play basketball, it's even worse. And I think that time will show that it will be.
I will be honest, I really didn't mind the 2D animation, but I did think that the 3D animation, it immediately looked aged. And I don't mean to I'm sure with the budget, they were probably under some constraints because I don't like to. I always feel bad when I kind of shit on the VFX, because I know there's a lot of those companies that go out of business because the studios are kind of cheap with them and everything. But I do admit that, oh boy, there's a lot of VFX scenes specifically with Don Cheadle too that just they didn't look too great.
But I think all that aside, the reason why I think this movie is so bad is because I think it represents just kind of it's like Ready Player One, but taken to an extreme. And I think that Ready Player One's a pretty bad movie because it's pretty much saying everything old. We have no new ideas. We just need you to reminisce about other things that were better from the past, and we'll just kind of put it into just this blend of everything. And that's how I feel about this movie, but I think it's even more shameless than what Ready Player One comes across or what Ready Player One does, because at least with Ready Player One, it's not like cheerleading a company, it's cheerleading these intellectual properties. And despite my reservations about that, at least it doesn't feel as corporate, as overtly corporate, I should say, as something like this movie. I don't know why LeBron. I mean, I don't know why LeBron signed on to this. I don't know why anybody did.
But you like that line, right, where LeBron's like, "Come on, y'all know athletes can't act, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
well,
nice.
well, also at the beginning of the movie, the plot is like the Warner Brothers people tell LeBron to come to a meeting, and they tell him that we created this new software. We can just put your likeness in any of our intellectual properties, and
I thought that was kind of scary.
Game of Thrones with LeBron, and they're like, wow, LeBron's like, this is a really stupid idea. And I think it's another one of those examples of haha, we're self-aware, guys, therefore it's okay for us to do whatever we want. And no, it's
but it's studios are actually doing that though.
Yeah, exactly.
They're resurrecting James Dean, not Warner Brothers specifically, but
James Dean to fight who knows if that's actually going to happen, because I remember hearing that 2 years ago. And I feel like
it's been a bit.
Yeah, but if it is actually true and they have James Dean, CGI James Dean fighting in the Vietnam War, James Dean died in the 50s, before the Vietnam War even happened. So Yeah, that's really cool. I can't wait to see Cary Grant floss next to Ninja in the new in a
I mean,
movie.
everyone's waiting.
Or like imagining like if imagining if like Jimmy Stewart joined the MCU or
Oh
something.
God, he's like older Captain America or something.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, Space Jam: A New Legacy is a horrible, terrible film, and I hate everything about it. Um, I thought that the worst thing that I watched this year was Run, Hide, Fight, and I think that movie's still awful. But I think Space Jam: A New Legacy may be even worse. But they're both just total trash that you should avoid. But on to a new release that I did really enjoy, M. Night Shyamalan's Old, which everybody should go see because nobody's making movies like this.
Mhm.
M. Night Shyamalan is truly a man on his own, kind of exploring this untreaded territory of psychological body horror that
Nice.
he wrote, and is his original idea. And I mean, everyone knows, for the most part, that the movie is about a beach that makes people old, but the way that Shyamalan stretches this concept, especially in the first hour, I think is like I was just shocked in my seat in the theater yesterday.
Mhm.
Every single thing that happened in that first hour, it's like it keeps one upping itself. And I think that's pretty amazing because, it doesn't, it could have, I think that it could have been something profound. It could have been like that movie, The Swimmer with Burt Lancaster, which is about, how it kind of would show, the passage of time. That movie is about Burt Lancaster deciding to swim back to his house. Um, so he decides to swim back to his house, and the way that he does it is through the pools of his neighbors, through his neighbors' backyard pools. And it's symbolic about, it uses a lot of symbolism about the passage of time. Swimming is representative of that, as well as like him kind of collapsing into his life collapsing as he gets deeper and deeper into alcoholism. uh but watching Old, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get any of these profound statements. And I'm not insulting the movie at all. I think that both directions could be fine, and Shyamalan took the more schlocky direction. But with that, you get a really entertaining, engrossing film that I think is a very original idea.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but yeah, everybody should go see Old. Probably my favorite. Probably my favorite that I've seen this year. Honestly,
Nice.
I mean, I need to probably catch up with a lot of stuff, but I can't really think of anything else. Probably Luca. I think Luca was probably better, but
Mhm.
other than that, uh, it's all about Old, baby.
Hey, I'm
Hey,
gonna try and get it in before next show. I'm also gonna cover. Well, me and Chris are actually gonna cover the Green Knight next show as well.
yeah.
In our new release section, and then after that we've got Suicide Squad. So
Yeah, that's gonna be so cool. So sick. Yay.
I saw one review of it. I've only seen one, and they seem to really like it. So I'm a little excited, but we shall see. I
Well,
just want to see John Cena have a good time with a role after Fast 9. So
I don't know. You wanna go through your top three that you've seen this top three films that you've
um
seen this week?
yeah, I'll tell the first one is Looney Tunes Back in Action, which I can now say having seen all the three main Looney Tunes theatrical films. This is definitely the best one and my favorite. Directed by Joe Dante. Really like the relationship between Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny in this. I can't really speak with how it aligns with the show because I've just started watching the show and I'm not like super familiar with it in terms of the original like show from its original run. And I've heard some people kind of complain about the human problem in this one, which, you know, when you have like an animated movie and then you have humans and they kind of drag it down. I didn't really mind Brendan Fraser. Um, it was fine to me, and this isn't really like spoiling anything, but essentially what happens is this is like happens in like the first like 5 or 10 minutes of it. But essentially Bugs Bunny and this executive producer for Warner Brothers have to go and retrieve Daffy Duck. That's all I'm really gonna say. I think it would have been kind of interesting if they would have taken the executive producer out and just put like Lola Bunny in it, just because I think that would have probably played out a little bit better. But then again, I don't really mind, and I know that a lot of things change within this movie. Because I've like read quotes from Joe Dante talking about it, and apparently the whole movie was completely different when he signed on. So second movie is the Birdcage, which
Yeah,
excuse me, from 1996.
which is a remake of a French
Yeah.
film.
Yeah, I don't know if I have too much to say about this one. I thought it was pretty good.
Gene
I-
Hackman and drag is pretty nice, right?
Yeah. I really enjoyed all the performances. Thought the production design was quite nice too, as well. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I recommend it. But I don't know if I have too much.
Well, I will say that this was definitely a movie that made me realize how talented Nathan Lane is. And I think that he's kind of underutilized in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Compared to in this one, where I think this is his best performance. I do like he shows up briefly in Goldmember.
That was
the
nice.
third Austin Powers movie, but it's like, dang, he's only there for like a minute or so.
Yeah.
And then he's in the producers.
Yeah, which I still need to
musical.
see the producers. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I thought him and Robin Williams really worked well together. But I did want to point out that their son, played by Dan Futterman, he's such an asshole, dude.
Yeah,
Like
it's
in
like,
the
why would you
movie.
do this to your parents?
Yeah, no, it's so wrong for people that might not know the plot of the Birdcage. It's about this son who is engaged to this woman, and sorry, and her parents are like really staunch like conservatives, and
Well, one of them is a senator, right? He's a senator or
yeah.
congressman. Yeah.
I believe he's a senator.
Okay.
And so he's just gone under this like he sets up like this moral code thing, and his partner that he set up the moral code with is caught. I think he had a heart attack, but he was caught with a prostitute and everything, so he's under fire. So they're trying to do this whole thing to get his image back up, and if he learns that his daughter's fiance, his parents own what would you call it? Oh no, I forget what they call it.
It's like a drag club.
Yeah, like a drag club. I'm so sorry. Yeah. If he owns a drag club and everything, it'll be a huge shot to him. So essentially, the son asks Robin Williams and Nathan Lane to play it straight for the weekend, to completely change their personalities. And he's such a dick about it the whole time. And that was really the most infuriating part to me, because I was just like, this is so wrong. I mean, not only are they helping you out with this, but they're really like sticking their necks out to help you, and he's just getting mad at them at every single thing they do.
Yeah, it's
that
like
really pissed me
he's
off.
afraid
Man.
of. He's like ashamed of like
of who they are,
of who his parents are.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's so sad, man. I was like, if I would just, I want to tell him to shut the hell up, but it, it got a reaction out of me, so I guess that was good, but I don't know. And finally, I watched Final Destination. Chris, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this one was for me.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It, I just kind of wanted to have fun with it, but I didn't become very engaged in it.
Did you at least
Um,
like the part where the airplane blows up and then like it's so powerful of an explosion that it shatters the terminal windows?
I did find that funny because I was like, that can't happen. That was like the plane was so fucking far away. Like I
Yeah.
don't how on earth would that happen? There should have been more Sean William Scott, man. I mean, he should have been
Oh yeah, I
should
forget
have been
that he's in
cracking
that.
cracking
Yeah.
jokes. Yeah, and then young, I forget his name, but young Doctor Doom plays Doctor Doom in Fantastic Four. He's also in it.
It's I don't know. I think that it kind of I like the subsequent ones probably better because they get more ridiculous, like especially
Yeah.
in the third one, like the whole like there's like this one death in like a tanning bed that's like just so dumb. It's like these girls go like to a tanning bed and like all this stuff falls on them and they can't get
Mm.
off of the tanning bed and then they like they get burned to death by this.
See, I just really wanted more dumb stuff. And like, don't get me wrong, there are like dumb deaths in this movie, but I just, I just found it to be really like the first death after they've like cheated death, right? With his friend Toby or Todd, sorry, with his friend Todd. I was like that. I don't know why, but that really did irritate me because like what happens is essentially he's in a bathroom and there's this liquid that comes out on the floor. He steps in the liquid and he slips and falls onto like this hanging this drying kind of string where you hang stuff on to like dry your clothes and stuff. And so the thing just like wraps around his neck like endlessly, and then he falls into the bathtub and he's like slipping and he's like keeps grabbing his neck. And I just thought like this, like the setup of it, I don't know, man. Like he could have just easily stood up. And I know that you're in like panic, so it's easier said than done. But he could have just pushed himself up. It's just such like I don't know.
Death is
It,
so powerful though, Fulton.
I mean, very true because it has an unrelentlessly desire to kill people. But I don't know. I didn't feel like it really had fun with the idea. But this could be a movie. I just may have watched it at the wrong time. So, but I don't know. I just wasn't too crazy about it. But I am interested to see the subsequent ones.
Well, I would say that the fourth one is the worst one easily.
Yeah.
But
Well, I wanted to ask you because it goes like 1 through 4, and then it's the Final Destination, and then they have Final Destination 6.
the Final Destination is the fourth one. Final
Oh,
Destination 5 is the latest one, and then I don't know if they're gonna
I on Letterbox it says that they're working on one, but that could happen or could not.
Well, I like I like how it's called The Final Destination because it was like they saw that the fourth Fast and Furious movie was called Fast and Furious,
Yeah.
and they said, let's do that. Let's try to make a really confusing sequel title that sounds vaguely like the first movie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're definitely fun dumb horror franchise that I like. But that's all right if it wasn't your thing, or at least if this one wasn't.
I think I'll enjoy the subsequent ones because I always saw the trailer for those as a kid, and I was like, I was always scared of him as a kid for some reason, but I think it would be pretty funny to watch them.
The one there's a part in the fifth one that I remember watching the trailer to when it came out in 2011 and like not being able to like watch the trailer because I was so scared. It's like there's this one scene where this girl gets like LASIK eye surgery, and then Which, and this is really dumb because no doctor would do this, but like, you know, he turns up the LASIK machine and he's like, all right, I'm gonna go. Bye. I'll be right back. And then like the LASIK machine keeps turning up like more and more rapidly. And she's like, what are you doing? And then like it just like burns a hole in her eye. And just it's just really, really, really stupid. But
I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember what movie it was, but there was the one where like a bridge was falling or something, and they were
yeah,
like jumping across it or something. That scared me. But
that's actually a really big moment in Final Destination lore is the bridge, because like it's really funny because like then there's a huge plot twist in Final Destination 5
uh-huh.
where you find out that like Final Destination 5 is actually a prequel because it ends with the bridge part. It's like it's just like, oh my god, why is this a prequel if the other movie it doesn't, it looks like it was filmed in 2011, like it's a ridiculous plot twist.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, like, I I think I started to enjoy Final Destination when like the rules were actually set out. I really didn't enjoy, like, I don't know if I didn't have any patience for the movie or something, but I just wanted to like know what the rules were because I was getting like really confused by it. But I guess that's kind of the point.
Well, they kind of
Um,
go more in depth on the rules in the second one, and then
mhm.
there's like you know, like the one girl that survives, the blonde-haired girl,
Yeah.
Ali Larder's character.
Mhm.
Well, she like they talk like the characters in the second one go and talk to her, and like she's just like in an insane asylum, and it's like all like
Of
pillow
course.
walls and stuff, and like she like always like she like has like all these extra precautions that she takes to avoid death, you know, because she
Well, I thought
cheated.
it was funny when when the main dude was prepping his like the cabin, but it honestly looked even worse. It looked like a hoarder's kind of cabin, and it looks like he was only making it worse, like more dangerous. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. But
well,
what were
he was just
Mhm.
panicking, you know, he
Yeah,
wasn't
that
thinking
is
straight.
true. It is true.
Well, I will say that the three things that I had a pretty good week of three
Mhm.
things that I watched, and honestly, so good of a week that I was like, it's hard to narrow it down. But I'm gonna say my number one best film that I watched this week gets better in my head the more I think about it, was Hal Ashby's Shampoo from 1975. Uh, Basically a movie written by Warren Beatty, and it's basically a movie about Warren Beatty. If anyone knows about, well, Warren Beatty was notorious back in the day for having quite the romantic involvements with women. And when I'm talking like both the leads from Shampoo he had a romantic relationship with. So
At the
Goldie
same
Hawn,
time?
I don't know at the same time, but Goldie
Okay.
Hawn and Julie Christie were both romantically attached to Warren Beatty, which is what the plot of the movie is. It's him trying to pick, you know, between Julie Christie, who he really loves, or Goldie Hawn, or it's, and so it's kind of nuts. And then we got other people, you know, Liv Ullman, uh Natalie Wood, Linda McCartney, Mary Tyler Moore,
Wait, Linda McCartney's in it?
Linda McCartney, yeah, Susan
Wow.
Sontag, Jane Fonda. Like, I don't know, it's nuts. Cher. It's a nuts list. And so like, you know, they say write what you know. Well, Warren Beatty knows
He knows
knows the
women.
ladies. And so this movie is just about him as a hairstylist that also
Oh my God,
has a
that's
sex
awesome.
addiction.
I didn't know he was a hairstylist.
Yeah, he's a hair. But the reason why he became a hairstylist was he said it was easier for him to hook up with women that way.
Well, much like Zohan,
much like
you know.
Zohan. I think this would be a great double feature with Yudomas of the Zohan. I think both of them are very politically rich texts. Considering that this film takes place on the day of the 1968 election between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey, and Domus of the Zohan is all about Israel, Palestine. I think both of them provide that meaty political subtext that
you would want.
Yeah. But yeah, had a great time with this one. Definitely one of those movies that I watched and then I've just been thinking about all day, and then I promptly bought the Criterion Blu-ray of it because I said it's on sale and I need to have this. But second best thing I watched this week was another new Hollywood type film. It was Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, which was a new Hollywood movie directed by Paul Mazursky, starring Natalie Wood, Robert Culp, Elliot Gould, and Dylan Cannon. It's about two couples in the 60s. A movie came out in 1969, so it's contemporary. And one of the couple, one couple, Natalie Wood and Robert Culp's characters, they go to this new agey therapy thing. And their life gets kind of changed by it, and they try to get into that kind of new age thinking, and they try to rope their friends into that type of mindset too. And so I think it's a pretty interesting film about kind of poking fun at this type of 60s type 60 that's type of 60s new age attitude, also also making fun of hedonism and that type of stuff. There's a great the final scene of the movie, which is 5 minutes long or so, has absolutely no dialogue at all, and I think it punctuates it quite well. It addresses sexual mores in very interesting way, and I'm such a sucker for new Hollywood and stuff, and especially something that has kind of a satirical edge to it. I think that you can't go wrong with this one. The reason why I wanted to watch it was because I watched a documentary on Natalie Wood that HBO put out last year, and that documentary is not good. Don't watch the documentary. It's very weird because I feel like it kind of feels all over the place, and it kind of talks about Natalie Wood and her career for a brief period of time, then also talks about her as a person, and feels kind of disconnected. And then it also does a lot of cover for Robert Wagner and kind of her mysterious death, which, in case you didn't know, she died off the coast of California in 1982, I believe. But people don't really know what happened, and this movie kind of feels oh, we got to show that Robert Wagner, who was also on the boat, and her on and off husband is, he was perfectly 1981 is when she died. He was perfect. There was nothing, it wasn't his fault, or I don't know, it just felt kind of weird, and it felt almost I felt like I didn't really get to know much more about Natalie Wood, but yeah. And then the last thing that I watched that I really liked was Mike Leigh's Happy Go Lucky, which is a movie by British director Mike Leigh. I hadn't seen any other of Leigh's films. still the big one especially is Naked, that I haven't seen.
I
But
highly recommend that one.
yeah, that's what I've heard
It's
from
great.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one's about a school teacher named Poppy, played by Sally Hawkins, and she is just a very bubbly person that's very happy all the time, and a lot of people don't like that, and it's just kind of a very slice of life type story. But you really empathize with her character and all the situations that she's put into, and there's just a great reoccurring dialogue exchange between her and a driving instructor that because she's learning how to drive throughout the movie, and kind of you get to see their different worldviews clash, and you really see like kind of how he's kind of how the driving instructor is a very insecure person and feels like he has to blame everyone else and is like racist and stuff, and then like she's just very much like, just wants to make everybody happy and stuff, and it's kind of a really really great exchange between them that you see throughout the movie. But there's just a bunch of other different run-ins that she has along the way, and yeah, I think that this one's a nice one. It's a happy movie for the most part, and feel like I watch a lot of depressing things. So, and especially Mike Lee. Mike Lee's, from what I've heard from people, Mike Lee just makes really sad movies.
Yeah, I would say so. I've seen Naked is a very, very depressing movie.
And Meantime, I've heard it's really sad too.
I've seen about 1/3 of that, and which I've been meaning to finish it. I just haven't done it yet, but it is very sad. Tim Roth is he's got a sadness to his character. Yeah.
But yeah, those are the three.
So good. All right. Well, I just thought about this. We hadn't talked about a feature film yet.
What was that? What feature film?
Is it your week or is it my week?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's my week technically.
Okay.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about that.
All right. Well, on that note, next week we are talking about Paul Schrader's 1978 film starring Richard Pryor and Harvey Keitel. That's right, Blue Collar. So nice. with the Card Counter trailer dropping this yesterday, I feel like it's only right to dive into who I would say is one of my favorite filmmakers. Just a really, really interesting filmmaker, and a very interesting social media presence. Sometimes you wince at what he writes, like a few days ago. Other times you just laugh with him. But Paul Schrader has been working for decades now and has an excellent body of work. So I'm excited to talk about him.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a Paul Schrader movie either. So been meaning to.
A Paul Schrader directed movie, you mean?
Yes. Sorry. All right.
Well, on that note, y'all have a good rest of your week and stay wavy.
Stay safe, and we will be back on regular schedule. We just had like a scheduling kind of thing that happened.
And one more thing, we hope that Bob Odenkirk is doing okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And then stay safe. And join the Discord if you want to talk any movies with us. So yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
friend, Jerry. But you're thinking white.
The American dream. If you're rich, you can buy it. If you're anything else, you've got to fight for it. Blue Collar,